to Phillips Mill Art Talk, and we're delighted to have you with us. I'm Laura Womack, and with me is Jen McHugh.
Hi, everyone. Happy 2023.
And Art Talk is happy to celebrate Phillips Mill Photography Exhibition's 30th anniversary. Congratulations to our photography team, including program founder and chair Spencer Saunders. And that show opens on April 2nd, and we look forward to seeing you all there. And we're delighted to have on Art Talk this year's photography juror, Jill Enfield. She's a fine art photographer, author, and educator. She's a leading authority in alternative photograph processes, and she has more accomplishments and accolades than I can enumerate here. But just to share a few, her solo show, The New Americans, was exhibited on Ellis Island and at the Annenberg Center in Los Angeles. She's taught hand coloring, wet plate collodion, and an array of other photo processes at Parsons, the New School of Design, and Rhode Island School of Design, among many other universities. She's exhibited internationally and published in National Geographic, Camera Arts, and many more. She's been a legend behind the lens for Nikon, a Kodak ambassador, and a pro shooter spokesperson for Low Pro and SanDisk, and many more. And she's appeared on the Today Show Weekend, CBS Saturday Morning, and so much more. I think, and many more is the theme here. Jill Enfield, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Art Talk.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I think we have a great photography show to look forward to at Phillips Mill. What do you think?
It seemed wonderful to me. I mean, hopefully it is. I think I'm a little biased since I picked everybody, but it looked great on the screen. I was sorry that I couldn't do it in person, but I'm really looking forward to, I'm hoping that I will be able to get down and see the show in person and see the actual prints.
Well, that's fabulous. We at Phillips Mill, we're very grateful to you for coming and doing that for us. And we look forward to, I hope, at some point to having you at the show. Right now, though, let's take a look at your work. Jen has put together a slideshow of your work. And so let's leap right in, Jen. Okay, Jill, this is from The New Americans.
Right. This is the what I made for the show at Ellis Island, and then I was lucky enough to have it travel. After Ellis Island, it went to Photoville in Dumbo in New York City, and then this image was in Los Angeles at the Annenberg Center, where Photoville sent it out there. And then when it came back to the East Coast, it went to a couple of other places. To have the show at Ellis Island, they asked me if I could fill 6 galleries. And I was a little worried about what to do, and then just thought about how I would go about really showing the story of immigration, and came up with the idea of this glass house. And people could walk in and out of it, and the entrance and the exit is Ellis Island, and then the side panels are the pictures of the immigrants that were blown up and transferred onto the windows.
Such an unusual way to display photography.
It is, I think, still. I came up with the idea because, as I was going about the idea of photographing people that came to the country, not because of World War II, like my family, but after World War II, and thinking about how there's this constant flow of immigrants and, of course, refugees. But this particular show was about immigrants and people wanting to come to the United States. I was thinking about how every time we have this huge influx, people make such a big deal about it. And it's like, there's too many, don't let so many in. And how, unless you're a Native American, you are you come from an immigrant family or a refugee family or a family that didn't really want to come here in the first place, but were forced to. But in any event, you're not a Native American. So those in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, and how to go about doing that. And so I came up with the idea of the glass house.
Great metaphor. And I think we've got another image from inside, Jen. And while she's flipping the slide, I just want to remind everybody that we love to hear from you, take your questions. And this is your opportunity to talk with Jill, to give her your questions. So please put those questions in the Q&A and we'll get to them as we go along. Okay, Jill, this is from inside.
Yes, this is, so the house could be shown in an interior space as well as outside. And this, of course, you can see is outside. And it's wonderful to see the light coming through. And also, I think you can really see, especially on the left side of the photograph, that the immigrants are staring back at you. So while you're staring at them, they're staring at you. And then you can see those end images, the image of the Statue of Liberty, which of course is what everyone thinks of when they're coming by boat, into New York Harbor or to Ellis Island. They see that Statue of Liberty. And on the other side of the house was also an image of the statue from Ellis Island. So just poignant images that have to do with coming to America.
Right, yeah, absolutely. And I think we have some questions about how you produce this, Jen.
Yes, we have two questions. One from Leona. She asks, image transfers or something else?
Okay, well, they start out as wet plate collodion, and then I scanned those into the computer and I put them on transfer paper. It was called laser tran. And that then can be put into water. They're water slide decals, and then you place that onto the windows. So it ends up to be a transfer process at the end.
Jill, that sounds simple. I suspect it's not as simple as it sounds. If I went out and got that paper, could I do that?
You could do it. I had a hard time doing it. And I've since spoken to someone else that the instructions say you can do it with water, and I couldn't get it to stick with water. I had to actually use turpentine. And then it says that it's permanent, and it's not permanent. It's not permanent. So you can do it, and you can follow their instructions. For some reason, it was a little bit harder for me than it was for a couple of people I've spoken to since, who said that they were able to get it to stick just with water. But I think wet plate collodion's much easier than this, than this was for me. So, everyone has their thing that they can do. And this was more difficult.
All right. Okay. And before we move on to looking at more of your work, I think we answered John's question about printed on glass, but I think we have one more question.
Yes, Frank wants to know, are these persons current immigrants, or are they pictures of immigrants from the early years of the last century?
No, I took all of these images. I took everything that's here. So they're current immigrants. And for my project, I wanted it to be people that came here after the 1950s or 60s. So everyone on this, these are just, half a dozen of the 100 that I photographed. And so everyone came, a couple of them came in the 50s, a few in the 60s, and the rest came some right before I photographed them. And I would photograph them from 2006 until 2011. I think I stopped photographing, 12 maybe.
Okay, I think we have some of some collodion pictures of yours, and Jen, while Jen pulls those up, can you describe a little bit for us the process, Jill?
Sure. And I can show you one also. This is not from the immigrant series. This is from my new one, but this is, let's see. Yeah, you can.
Yeah. Do we
Sure.
have, I think we have that one.
Yeah, it might be better to show it online instead of showing a real one. But collodion is, you can do several things with collodion. You can make a collodion ambrotype, which is what I do. You can do a negative on glass, and you can also make a tintype. Most people know what tintypes are more than ambrotypes. A tintype is also you know, a positive, but it's on aluminum instead of glass. I personally like to work on glass. There we go. That looks better online than it did holding it up and seeing yourselves. And so I like to work on glass, and what you do is you have to cut the glass, clean the glass, and then you coat it with something called collodion on a mixture of a couple of other chemicals, and that makes it become a little bit sticky. And then you put it into a bath of silver, liquid silver, and the collodion becomes light sensitive. Once the silver sticks to the collodion, it becomes light sensitive. And then I put it into my camera and photograph with it. And then you have to develop it immediately. So it's a process that, that's why it's called wet plate, because it has to stay wet from start to finish.
And this is an amazing picture. Tell us about this particular image.
Well, this particular image is part of my new series, which actually I didn't shoot in camera. All the immigrants were shot in camera, and most of the Ellis Island pictures were shot in camera. But this was shot while on my commute on Metro North, and because I moved out of New York City about 8 years ago into the Hudson Valley, and I photographed out the window of the train, and then I did it digitally. Actually, I did it with my iPhone, and then I came home. I made a positives just on transparency film, and then I actually put that transparency film onto my wet plate to transfer it on to the glass and make an ambrotype. And then behind me is actually, I keep forgetting that I'm in the opposite. That's a picture of the Newburgh Bridge, which I then had printed large on glass, so that the whole production, I'm photographing through glass, I'm putting it onto a transparency, I'm photographing it again onto glass, and then I'm having it transferred onto a larger piece of glass. So it's about looking out of the windows and seeing the passage of time.
So they have, I guess, because the process is traditional, maybe the silver is what I'm reacting to from the old process, the look of old photographs, but it has such a beautiful quality to the image that I think is so different. I mean, it's astonishing to me that you took this on an iPhone.
Well, when you first take it, they look very different on the iPhone compared to what they look like once I finish with them. You know, digital images to me are a little colder and don't have as much of a aesthetic feel to them or a nostalgic feel to them. And this whole project is about the passage of time And I'm also trying to find the, I'm not finished with it yet. So my thinking about it hasn't been really cemented in place yet, but I'm thinking about how Henry Hudson came here much later than the Native Americans. They were here thousands and thousands of years before. And so I would like to add the Native American names to what these places were called before it was colonized by the white man.
Yeah. There's an atmospheric quality here that I'm wondering, is it the process, or is it your eye, or is it, the photograph that starts with? Is it all of it?
I hope it's a combination of all of them. Because I think that, especially in photography, I think composition is the most important. If you don't have a good composition to start with, you're not going to be able to fix it with a process. And so that composition has to do with my eye, and how you get to a finished product shouldn't really matter. But for me, when I'm thinking about how I want my images to look, the wet plate is, that's how I visualize it to begin with. And so that's what's important to me. All of the marks and everything that are on there are because I'm placing a piece of acetate onto a wet piece of glass. And so different parts of the silver are actually being removed, and other parts are staying. And so you're getting all these artifacts, which I think help bring what I'm seeing in my mind onto the glass, onto the finished product.
You're talking about the marks. We see a lot of texture in the water and the sky. That's what you're talking about. Is that right?
Yeah, it was a foggy day. So the white area underneath the bridge, that is fog. But then those other marks, the black marks in the water, that is from the collodion.
And the bridge is so clear in that picture. We're having a little preview there.
Yeah.
Jen, what? Jen, there we go. We're back, and we have a bunch of questions piling up. We want to hear from all of you, so do join us with your questions. I think the iPhone aspect of this is fascinating for people. Jen, what do we have?
Okay, we have two that I think were answered. Does Jill feel the iPhone is as yet an accepted art media for print exhibition?
And I just want to add that to add on to that question, because we received in advance an email question for you from a photographer who has a work in a gallery, and they've upscaled an iPhone 14 Pro Max image to archival 30 by 40 inch prints. And they say the quality is amazing. They want to know if they should fess up in the gallery.
I don't see why not. I think that, people were making fun of people for so long. Oh, you shot it with an iPhone, you don't know what you're doing. But at this point, you can do so much with an iPhone, and you can res them up and make these gorgeous prints. So again, I don't think it matters what you start with, and I don't think it matters. I mean, when I first was trying to decide how I was going to go about this project, I took my film camera with me. I took a Holga, a plastic camera. I took my digital camera. I took my iPhone, and I liked what I got from my iPhone. I like the serendipitous movement. I shoot with the live, and then I can pick what I want out of it. And so I just think that it's a wonderful tool. And it's like when people used to say, well, what'd you shoot with? You must have a great camera. And it's like, really? Like, do you ask a painter what they paint with? You know, you don't ask them what brush they use and what paints they're using. And, you know, I mean, you shouldn't use, you know, student grade paint, but that's about, you know, as literal as you should get with it. It doesn't matter. If you can get a really good image out of whatever tool you're using, use it. And, you know I hate it when people keep, you know, repeating the same things, but you know, the best camera is the one you have. What do you have with you all the time? You have your phone, you know, so it's not even, I don't even consider it a phone. I consider it a camera. I mean, kids don't even call you anymore. They're not. My kids
That's
don't
true.
use it as a phone, right? You know?
And actually, some of them are giving up their phones for other reasons and going back to cameras, are they not?
A lot of people are. Yep. A lot of people. I mean, I still love shooting with my Hasselblad, and I still love shooting with my Deerdorf. I'm not going to give them up, but it depends on what I want to do with it. And I don't think I should limit myself. I mean, it would have been very difficult for me to get these images. I couldn't bring my Deerdorf on Metro North.
Yeah.
And, you know, and shoot. By the time I got everything ready, I would have been, you know, back in the city. So you do it, you shoot with whatever tool is going to work for you.
Jill, I think we're all encouraged that a photographer of your stature is taking iPhone pictures. I certainly am, not being a photographer. And if it makes you feel any better, we ask people what paint they use on this show all the time. So
Well, you shouldn't. It doesn't.
well, people enjoy it. And we have a lot of artists and photographers who come. So we'll get back to their questions. I'm having such a nice time with you where the time is passing and we want to see more of your work, but let's get through some of the questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Silverwise says, I think it's fine, but I feel that Apple shouldn't get the credit. Just call it a smartphone camera. Which
I
is
think
fair.
that's a very good point, and you're right, because I hate Apple, actually. Shouldn't say that.
We have a comment from Leona. She loves the atmosphere in the last image we were showing. I believe that was the Newburgh Bridge. Cindy also says, I love the ghost-like quality that you achieve with the wet plate. And then she asked, how did you transfer the image from your iPhone? Which I'm not sure if we answered or not, but
I don't know. I upload it onto my computer. You know, I don't really know how to use the cloud totally. So I actually do, you know, send it over. I plug in my phone. I'm sure it's on the cloud somewhere, but I don't really know how to go onto that. So I'm technically with digital stuff, not that I just learn what I have to learn. And so I plug my phone into my computer and take my images off and then go into Photoshop and make sure that they're not, you do want to do that, whether you do it, you know, if you know how to do it from the cloud, that's fine, or straight from your phone, but you don't want to go into, you know, that preview app, or you don't want to go into extra apps. So you want to go right into either, you know, Photoshop or Lightroom if you use Lightroom, and otherwise it degrades the image. So you just want to make sure you're doing whatever you can to keep the quality. And these phones, you know, they take very high res images. Once you get them into a Photoshop file or a TIFF file, whatever you're used to using, and take it off of 72 DPI, you can see that they're quite large.
Okay. That's good help. Jen, what's up next in the Q&A?
Okay, we have Hillary said, I recently shot full frame digital images out the window on the Metro North Hudson line. It was during Winter Storm Sage. The images are intended for compositing. Sorry. In hindsight, I probably should have used a polarizer because I do have a lot of glare from the car lights. I can reduce it in Photoshop, but I wish I didn't have to. Do iPhones automatically limit glare?
No, they do not. You have to, when I was shooting with my camera or when I was shooting with my phone, I put it right up against the window. And so I didn't get glare because it was right up against the window. I mean, on some of the, a couple of times I actually sat in places where the window was dirty on purpose because I wanted the texture from the window as well. But if you put your lens right up against the window, then you're fine. But if you're shooting with a full frame camera, yeah, get a polarizing filter. And that will take away that glare.
So you're using it all, including the smudge on the window.
Yep.
Yeah. That's fabulous. All right, one more question, then we're going to get back to the slideshow.
Sure. Linda said, I've seen photos of you photographing people on site with your big camera and portable darkroom and the whole thing from start to finish. It is so impressive.
Oh, thank you.
And actually, that's a great lead in. We have a video of Jill doing a collodion. Sorry, thank you very much for the correction.
Sorry.
We're going to run that, and if we have audio, if we don't have audio, then Jill will describe the process for us. Otherwise, we'll enjoy the music. That's incredible, Jill. I mean, first of all, it just haul all that stuff around, be doing that. It's an amazing process. And then the image, which we'll pull up in a minute, is beautiful. Tell us a little bit, sort of, you can back narrate that if you would.
Sure. So that dark box, that portable dark room, was made just for me. And I love it. It's like the perfect height for me, and it's the perfect, you know how you always complain, you know, how high cabinets are, and this is just absolutely perfect for the way I work. I had to measure my legs and my waist and my height, and it was terrific. So the portable darkroom is in itself very heavy. And a friend of mine then put wheels on it for me to make it a little bit easier. But basically, it's a lot of stuff to lug around, because you also have to have all of your chemicals, the trays, and then water, and then my camera and the lens and the tripod, so it's a lot of stuff. But it's really the way the images look when you're shooting them in camera are actually similar to how it looks when I'm taking a moving image of just all of the background becoming very fuzzy. If I'm shooting water, the water is very smooth, it's a very slow shutter speed. And so it's quite lovely, when you're doing it in camera, and you get a totally different feel to it at times. And when you're photographing outside, like this one was done in the park, it's only like a 5-second exposure. I mean, it was about this time, it was spring. And so it was a little cool, but the sun was still pretty bright. So it was about a 5-10 second exposure. When I'm photographing inside, it's about a 45-second exposure, because I don't like using flash. It sort of, freaks people out when the flash goes off, because they have to be so bright. So I either use hot lights, which are also, make people tear if their eyes are open too long, or natural light, which is what I prefer. And then it's a 45-second exposure, like I said, but you have to have it from start to finish. You have to have that darkroom with you. Now, when I teach workshops, I have an ice fishing tent, because the ice fishing tent, I bought one that 3 people, it says it's for 3 people, and that's 3 people that are actually sitting around fishing, but you can have maybe 4 people in there. So I can have 3 students watching me while I'm doing it, and it's much easier. They can't watch me in the portable darkroom. So the
That's just,
fishing tent is great to take for teaching.
that's just incredible. Let's see, we have a couple of questions about that video. I'm just a little bit gobsmacked at the whole process. And the thought of you and your students with the ice fishing tent, tent is pretty amazing. Yeah, so let's go to those questions. Sorry. I know what I wanted to ask you. Could you tell us about the model, please? I mean, what an extraordinary young man.
He's was just this lovely boy. He was actually an intern for my husband, and he was the sweetest boy ever. And he was so excited that I asked him if I could photograph him for that video. He was so thrilled, and mainly because he said he looked like a badass, and his mother was just going to crack up, because he was the sweetest thing ever.
He does look a little bit like a badass, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
but he was just this great kid, and he had a ball, and we gave him a print. I scanned in the plate and gave him a print, and he was thrilled, and he was a great model. I mean, he stood up against the table, and it was like, oh my God, you look perfect, stay there. And he did. I mean, he stayed there the whole time, even when I was telling him, okay, I have to go into the portable darkroom while I, coat and sensitize the plate, and that's going to be 4 minutes. Are you okay? You can move. He didn't move. He was amazing.
Wow, great model. He could get gigs.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay, Jim, what are our questions?
Okay. Stephen Harris said, I have seen this video 4 to 5 times, and each time it is so amazing. Great model too. So he agrees. John asked, what is the actual time from start to finish?
From start to finish is probably about 20 to 30 minutes. And thank you, Stephen. Yeah, because it's, well, I have to set up. If you're counting the setup time, it's probably 45 minutes. If I'm able to photograph in my home and then just use this dark room, it saves about a half an hour. You know, it saves quite a bit of time.
Okay.
The
We have
setup.
a bunch more questions and we're going to try to get to them all, but I'd love to look at some more of your work, Jill. Should we do a few more collodions and then we can go on to some of the other processes?
Sure.
Yes. So we
So
are.
this one is out the window on Metro North, and it was pouring. And actually you can see the there's a reflection of the house in all of those raindrops that came through.
Oh, incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
All right, let's see the next one. I want to show a fair amount of your work, so I'm going to move a little bit faster. Powerful, Jill. Talk to us about this.
So this is in Grand Central, and me going to the train and just notice, well, first of all, it was, you know, right around COVID, so there's not very many people there, but also just again, just deciding how to photograph it and what I wanted to show, and not really being a digital photographer, but using digital for the first time in my work, you know, in a finished piece. I didn't want it to look like a very clean cut digital image of this. And so I positioned myself so all of the lights would give me that, the glare coming down.
And that, I think that's what I love about it so much. Really effective. Okay, let's look at the next one.
So this is Cold Spring, New York, and I think my favorite time to photograph is in the winter, and it always has been. It seems like my favorite images of my own, you know, from all of the different periods that I photographed are in the winter. And it was just very wet snow, and it just looked very bleak to me. I also don't usually like to photograph cars, and luckily the cars are sort of hidden by the railings.
The light is a little challenging here, I would think, from a, you know, a non-photographer's perspective. Just there's so much glare from snow and the balance. I like it, but I think it's non-traditional. Am I wrong?
Well, I think I guess it depends. I mean, a lot of times when you're photographing in snow and it is glary, you know, snow and sand can be very glary, but then that comes with how you expose it. And if you're exposing it on film, then you have to make sure you're developing it properly. And if you're exposing it digitally, then usually it just needs to be a little bit under, and I don't know. I don't, you know, I do some of this stuff without thinking. You know, it just it's out of habit.
Right.
I've been doing it so long that that I can tell what to do in the different lighting situations. And that's practice. You know, when I'm teaching, you know, they're like, how do you learn how to do this? And it's like, you have to keep practicing. You know, it's like anything else. You just have to keep doing it. And then looking at what you got and then figuring out, well, how can you make it better?
There's
And
some great clarity, like really fine detail in this, but I think we'll go back to some questions. Got, yep.
Okay, we have a question from Nora. Are there particular 19th century photographers who inspire your work?
I have a whole list that I keep up in my darkroom of people that inspire me from every, from like, well, Frederick Scott Archer is the one that developed wet plate, so he has to be there, of course. And then Julia Margaret Cameron has to be there, Gertrude Casimir. I mean, it's, if you want to see my list, I can just, and it's not even complete. I mean, I write things in pencil as I remember people. It's, I try and go for a lot of women, but Alfred Stieglitz is there, Augustus Sanders is there. It's huge list.
All right, good. Okay, back to the photos. Jen is going to pull those up, and maybe I'll ask oh, nope, she's got it. Here we go.
Okay, so this is from Ellis Island. So while we were getting ready for the show, I told them that I wanted to add images from the island into the show. Because they want it to be they want it to be sort of educational and also just really expanding as much as I could. So I said I really wanted, when I came up with the glass house, I said I really needed images from the island. And this particular one is from the hospital wing, which is now open. You can go and do a hard hat tour. But when I was there, they just had I had an assistant with me, and then they had a bunch of people that wanted to watch me and that had to watch me because it's a hard hat area. And they needed to keep the, if there was a tour that was coming through, they needed to keep them away from me. So this particular hallway, they're the ones that came up with, when they made the hospital, not bringing germs from one area to another. And so they had these rounded hallways going from one area of the hospital to the other, where the people that worked in the hospital would could change their clothes and could get sort of sanitized before they went into the other area. And so this was that hallway.
Okay, great. Thank you. Oh,
So this is one of the other rooms, and I don't know how many of you know JR's work. He goes by just his initials, JR, but he had images up in these areas as one of his exhibits, and I couldn't, so I actually had to photograph this with my digital camera and then take out his imagery that was in some of the rooms that I wanted to be in. So I couldn't, and it was also getting very dark. So some of them had to be done digitally. And then I did it with a regular digital camera, and then came back and made the transparency and then put them on glass from there. So this is actually a contact print from a digital image.
so we're talking a lot about the technical aspects of it, but I think in this particular, all of your work is very emotional, Jill. And this work, I think it's visceral. I think all of us have gone into those rooms that have been in houses that are abandoned. You've got the angle of walking into the room and just seeing sort of the, what's left behind when humans leave. And so I don't want to miss that part of your work. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I've always loved abandoned spaces, more so than, and actually the Immigrant series was the first time I had ever really photographed people. I usually do photograph abandoned places or places where people have just upped and left, and you can sort of feel a ghost presence when you're in those spaces. And that's always attracted me, of just not really having the presence of people, but without people in them.
Yeah, I love it. And I have memories that look like this that you captured really well. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I promise people to get their questions in, and I really think it's something that we can offer to our audience. So I want to honor that. We don't have a ton more time, and we have a bunch of questions. So let's see if we can go through those, give them a good answer, but quickly.
Okay. Vince has a question. Jill, what are your thoughts about adding AI generated elements into a photograph?
Again, I think that's up to the person. I mean, I'm not, I'm personally not interested, but I actually just saw something, Maggie Taylor. I don't know if you guys know who Maggie Taylor is, but she is a photographer that works mainly in putting found images together and making stories. And she was saying how she uses AI in her imagery now and is doing a workshop on that. Personally, I have no interest in it, but if you do, all power to you.
Okay.
Jay has a question. Sorry, we've been delayed with this. He asked, what process do you use to create digital negatives, and where did you learn the process? Does your book cover the making of digital negatives?
My book does cover it the way I do it. There's so many different ways to do it. And you have to, because I came from a film background, I know how to read a negative. And so I do it very simply in Photoshop. Dan Burkholder is the first one that came up, I think, I'm pretty sure, the first one that came up with digital negatives. And so when I first learned, I learned from him. I think I've said I don't really, I'm not real big on playing around digitally. I just learn what I have to learn. But there is a great way to learn it through John Cone in Vermont, where you get his inks, and it's almost perfect every time. And then some other people, have Christina Anderson has a full huge book. I mean, I have one chapter in my book. Christina has a big book that she did with Ron Reeder on how to do digital negatives. So it depends on how technical you want to be, and how much testing you want to do. But I do it by eye when I'm in Photoshop.
All right, good.
Okay, we have a question from Gull. What's your vision for analog photography? While the films and all other material prices are going up, do you think analog photography will be getting stronger, or is it coming back strongly?
I think it's coming back stronger. I think that it is, I think it's a shame that it's getting so expensive. My classes are, sort of went down, they waned, and now they're coming right back up, and there's waiting lists for the analog classes and for alternative processes. So I think that it is definitely, there's a resurgence. I think that especially kids that have grown up with they were born with phones in their mouths. I mean, they don't know they don't know what a typewriter is. You don't have to take typing. You just, learn how to use the computer, as you're learning how to speak. So I think that they're getting sick of being on the computer, and they're just having a ball with doing analog. One of the things I like about Collodion is I don't have to worry about film because I'm making my own. So it's that's the old-fashioned analog. It's an old-fashioned Polaroid. You see it right away.
All right, good. We're getting through the questions as we promised. Let's take another one.
Sure. Linda asked, do you get permission before entering abandoned homes? Or is a pullover, run in, and hope you don't fall through the floor?
It depends. I have been known to do both. I have gone into abandoned houses without asking permission, and abandoned schools and psych wards. And then I have been known to ask permission. So you have to use your head and decide what's safer and better for you. And if you don't get permission and you fall through the floor, I don't think you could sue them.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. We've got a little more time. We started late and we're going to reclaim that time. Let's take a look at you do some hand tinting, which I think is beautiful again. And while Jen pulls that up, do you have a feeling for the retro, Jill? Is there a nostalgia, or what is your attraction to these processes and this look?
I think it's more that I've never felt like I see the world in, Kodachrome, a regular, bright Fuji film. I just I see it sort of in a haze, and I guess I want to have my photographs in that way also. And I always felt an attraction to the ethereal and to the abandoned places, and to just going back in time. And so and dreamlike imagery, not just what you see in front of you as a I wouldn't make a very good photojournalist. I don't want to see what's right in front of me. I don't see any reason to be photographing that. For me, I like seeing other people's images like that, but I don't ever feel like mine should be reproduced in that way.
Well, this is certainly a dreamlike, time-focused picture here.
Well, good. I'm glad at least you get what I'm trying to do. So that's really nice. And I also, with all of my work, I tend to not, so that I can get that feeling, I tend to never work on a series right after I shot it. None of the images were done immediately, were completed immediately after I photographed them. I usually put things away for a while and then come back to them so that I can look at them with new eyes and get that feeling back of what it felt like to be there, or what I think it felt like before I was there.
Yeah. Beautiful. Do you want to talk about these hand tints that we're looking at?
Yeah, so these last two images were done in New Mexico. One was in Taos and this one's in Acoma. And again, I shot them and then didn't print them or paint them for years after I was there. And I didn't look at what the colors were originally. Sometimes if I'm thinking about how I want to paint it, I'll look through just, like not quite a color wheel, but, just other color images just to see if that's what I want. But I love mixing paints. I very rarely will just buy ready-made or mixed paints. I like to play around with them and mix them and sort of get a feel for what they are. I didn't really take a color class, and so I didn't really know what I was doing when I first started, but I've always had sort of an affinity for mixing paints. And
Can we ask, so this is our talk, we do ask about paint and I know that you don't love that question, but may I ask you what paint you use?
You can. I mean, you're asking me what camera I use and how I do. I'm just saying it's not necessary. But I will use oil paints and I don't pay attention to the type of oil paint. I will make sure that I don't get student grade, that I will get a good paint. And all of the companies, Holbein and Winsor Newton, they all make, and Grumbacher, they all make student grade. So I just make sure that I stay away from the student grade paints because I don't think they're archival, and I also don't think they're as strong. All of these were done with oil paints, but then also color pencils like Prismacolors. And then when I started painting on liquid emulsion prints, and that's on a watercolor paper, then I went to chalks and pencils.
Okay. All right. We have several more questions. If you don't mind, let's go through them, and we'll keep the slideshow going. And Jen does the slideshow and the questions. So Jen, I'm going to take the questions, and you, if you don't mind, go through the slideshow so we can get both done. Kathy wants to, and we just have 5 minutes, Jill. So
I'll try and be quick.
yeah, we love your full answers, but we'll give everyone a chance to ask their question. So Kathy wants to know, what scanner do you use?
I don't know what the number is. I have one of those I had a really big Epson scanner, but it broke. And so then I got one of the small cute ones that are, I don't know, V750 or 850. I don't know. That's something I don't pay attention to.
Okay. Vince wants to know, how do you know the exposure setting? This might have been during the collodion.
Oh, I'm pretty good with light. When I came up in school, you had an analog camera that just had a battery in it, and even if you took the battery out, you could shoot with it. And so we were forced to learn light. And so I'm pretty good with light and guessing.
Okay. Still on the collodion, what about the toxicity of the chemicals? How do you stay safe? Have you ever had any problems?
One of the main problems I have is that I am now very, very sensitive to ether. And so I don't add extra ether in with the collodion, because collodion comes with enough ether to make it sensitive enough. So I just don't use extra ether. I have extremely good ventilation. And I'm very careful. I wear gloves, and I wear an apron, and I'm just very careful. Yeah, the ventilation is the main thing. You have to have good ventilation. And when I will add that when even though my ventilation is good, when I'm making the contact prints, like I did with this, with the Metro North series, which is not done yet, by the way. But when I'm doing that, I don't stay in the dark room all day. When I'm taking a portrait or I'm doing, landscapes outside, because I'm going in and out, it's much better for me because I'm taking in fresh air. But I won't stay in the dark room all day, because even with my good ventilation, I don't think it's healthy.
Okay. And then we've got a painter who wants to know how you paint the photo. We asked about the paints themselves. Do you have a special process? Is it like any other painter would do? Is it at an easel?
No, I usually paint, just on my table in the dark room, and just because I like working in here. And I have a palette that I mix the colors on, but I put the paint on a print using a Q-tip and cotton. I don't use a brush.
Okay,
So I just use the cotton.
all right, very interesting. We've got a couple of yes and no's. Is this from Ranchos de Taos?
The hand painted one was, yes, that's where that was. That was Taos. The one with the ladder was Acoma. And the one of the church was also Acoma.
Okay, a comment from Cindy, the Grand Central shot is reminiscent of the iconic Hal Maury image.
Oh, that's cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
I like that.
Here's a yes or no, maybe a suggestion. Have you ever photographed the Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia?
I have. That is such a
Oh,
fun place. Yeah, I love that place.
okay. Barbara's got your number. Okay. Uh, and, and then last question, Ginny says there's in the photo of the young man from the park video, she loves the quality of your images. I endorse that. And she wants to know, is there a cat in the upper right? Was that a random accident? If so, accident.
I don't think there's a cat in that one.
Okay. All right. Well, good.
But if it is, it's random.
I had no idea there were so many different processes, and I really appreciate, Jill, you coming on Art Talk to share them with us, to explain them, and to show your beautiful work. Lots of compliments to you as well from the audience. So thank you so much for joining us on Art Talk.
Well, thank you very much. And there are tons more processes that I don't even touch on.
Okay, well, there's always room to grow as an artist, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so thank you so much to our photography team at Phillips Mill. Congratulations on your 30th show and all the hard work. Thank you to Spencer Saunders, our founder and fearless leader, and to the team that helped us put this together. Jean Mahich was our producer for the show. Jen McHugh is our tech queen. I'm your host, Laura Womack. Thank you all for joining us on Art Talk. It's great to be back, and we'll see you at the mill.
Thank you so much, by the way. I really appreciate it.
Jill, it's been just such a delight to talk to you twice. I really do hope that you're able to come down. You'll let us know if you are, and keep us up to date with what you're doing. Your work is just gorgeous, really beautiful.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, I'm only a third of the way done with the Metro North series, so hopefully more to come.
Yeah, we want to see it when you're ready.
You got it.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.